The divorce papers hit my desk like a slap across the face. But it was the laughter from the conference room that really twisted the knife. I could hear my wife Vanessa's voice carrying through the glass walls of her brand new law firm, punctuated by the giggles of her staff. "Test run, husband," she was saying, and the room erupted again. I swear, that's what I should have called Carter from the beginning. A practice marriage before the real thing. I stood there in my $1,000 suit, holding a bouquet of congratulatory flowers for her firm's opening, feeling like the world's biggest fool. Carter Hawthorne, 38 years old, successful tech consultant, and apparently nothing more than a dress rehearsal for my wife's actual life. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd funded this entire operation. The sleek downtown office space, the mahogany conference table where they were currently dissecting my marriage, even the champagne they were toasting with. All of it came from my $20 million investment in Hawthorne and Bishop Legal Services. Vanessa spotted me through the glass and her face went pale. She whispered something to her business partner, Trent Bishop, a 41-year-old shark in an Armani suit who'd been circling my wife like prey for months. He grinned and nodded, straightening his tie. I walked into the conference room with a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. "Congratulations, darling. The place looks fantastic." "Carter," Vanessa's voice was too bright, too cheerful. "You're early. We were just having a little celebration with the team." The team. Julia Martinez, the office manager, couldn't quite meet my eyes. Mark Stevens, the junior lawyer, was trying not to smirk. Tasha Williams, the paralegal who'd been Vanessa's confidant since law school, just stared at her champagne glass. "I heard," I said, setting the flowers on the table. "Something about test runs?" The room went dead silent. Trent cleared his throat and stood up, all 6 feet 2 inches of him. He had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, never facing real consequences. Old money confidence. "Carter, good to see you, man. We were just joking around. You know how it is." "Actually, I don't." I kept my voice level, conversational. "Why don't you explain it to me?" Vanessa jumped in quickly. "It was nothing, just silly office humor. You know how lawyers are." But I was looking at the divorce papers in my hand, noting the date. They'd been prepared weeks ago, long before today's spontaneous celebration. The signatures were already in place, hers and her lawyer's. All that was missing was mine. "Funny thing about jokes," I said, scanning the room. "They usually contain a grain of truth. So tell me, Vanessa, how long exactly was this test run supposed to last?" She had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Carter, maybe we should discuss this at home." "Oh, I think here is perfect. After all, this is where you've been spending most of your time lately. Late nights, weekend meetings, that business trip to Miami that somehow involved a couple's massage at the Four Seasons." Trent shifted in his chair. His wedding ring caught the light. Apparently, I wasn't the only husband being kept in the dark. "Now hold on," he started, but I cut him off. "No, you hold on. I've been watching, listening, putting pieces together. The private phone calls, the sudden interest in working out, the new lingerie that I never got to see. Very thorough test run, Vanessa. Very thorough." Julia was recording everything on her phone now, probably for the office group chat. Mark looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Tasha was staring at me with something that might have been respect. "You want to know what's really funny?" I continued, pulling out my own phone. "I've been doing some testing of my own, testing how quickly I could liquidate assets, cancel joint accounts, withdraw investment funding. Turns out, it's pretty fast when you have good lawyers. Better lawyers than these, actually." Vanessa's face went white. "You can't do that. We have contracts." "We sure do. Contracts that include morality clauses, fidelity requirements, and some very specific language about what happens when partners engage in behavior detrimental to the firm's reputation." I looked directly at Trent. "Sleeping with your business partner's wife while you're married to someone else? That definitely qualifies." The room erupted. Vanessa started shouting about how I couldn't prove anything. Trent was on his feet, jabbing his finger at me and talking about lawsuits. Julia was frantically texting, probably updating her social media followers in real time. I just stood there, letting them rage, until my phone started buzzing. And buzzing. And buzzing. "Excuse me," I said, glancing at the screen. "I should take this. It's my banker. Actually, it was my daughter, Emily, but they didn't need to know that. The 12-year-old was probably wondering why I wasn't home for dinner yet. What she didn't know was that by tomorrow, our lives would be completely different. I walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. Oh, and Vanessa, the test run is over. You failed. I left them there, arguing among themselves, and stepped out into the cool evening air. My phone was actually starting to ring now. My banker, my lawyer, my accountant. Word traveled fast in our circles, and when Carter Hawthorne pulled $20 million out of a law firm on its opening day, people noticed. But as I reached my car, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, quick footsteps. Carter! Carter! Wait! I turned to see Trent jogging after me, his perfect hair slightly mussed, his face red with anger or exertion or both. We need to talk, he panted. No, I said, getting into my BMW. We really don't. But as I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, standing in the middle of the street, shouting something I couldn't hear over the sound of my own laughter. The real test was just beginning. 3 days later, I was crouched in the storage compartment of a speedboat, listening to my best friend Nate explain why this was either the stupidest or most brilliant thing I'd ever done. I'm just saying, he whispered, checking his watch. There are easier ways to catch your wife cheating than infiltrating a cruise ship in international waters. Nate Rodriguez had been my friend since college, back when he was studying criminal justice and I was buried in computer science textbooks. Now he ran a private investigation business, and his 20 years as a cop had taught him how to think like both the hunter and the hunted. Easier, yes. More satisfying? Absolutely not. I adjusted the small camera clipped to my shirt. Besides, you said it yourself. We need irrefutable evidence if I want to keep Emily and protect my assets. Your assets are already protected. You moved fast enough on that front. He was right. In the 72 hours since the law firm confrontation, I'd been busy. Very busy. Frozen joint accounts, transferred investments, and most importantly, discovered exactly where my wife had gone for her emergency legal conference. The Celestial Princess, a luxury cruise ship currently sailing through the Caribbean. According to the passenger manifest that Nate had somehow acquired, Vanessa Hawthorne had booked a suite. So had Trent Bishop. Adjoining suites. Approaching the dock now, called Pete Morrison from the pilot's seat. Salty Pete, as everyone called him, was a former Navy SEAL who now ran discreet transportation services for people who needed to get places quietly. Nate had saved his business from a nasty lawsuit a few years back, and Pete never forgot a favor. Remember, Nate said, handing me a crew uniform he'd somehow procured, we're maintenance staff responding to a plumbing emergency in the upper decks. You fix the problem, get your evidence, and we're gone before anyone knows we were there. I pulled on the uniform and grabbed the toolbox that contained considerably more than plumbing equipment. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise. But Carter, he grabbed my arm. No matter what you see in there, no matter how angry you get, we stick to the plan. Evidence first, revenge later. The Celestial Princess loomed above us as Pete maneuvered the speedboat toward the service dock. At this hour, most passengers would be at dinner or the evening show. Perfect timing for a little maintenance work. Getting aboard was surprisingly easy. Pete's forged work orders got us past the first security checkpoint, and Nate's natural authority handled the rest. Within 15 minutes, we were in the service elevator, heading toward the premium suite level. Deck 12, Nate murmured, checking the ship's layout on his tablet. Suites 1247 and 1249. According to the ship's schedule, there's a masquerade party on Deck 14 right now. Perfect. If Vanessa and Trent were maintaining their charade of separate rooms, they'd be at the party, playing their parts. But I had a feeling their masks were about more than just the theme. We found Suite 1247 first, Vanessa's room according to the registration. Nate made quick work of the electronic lock with a device that looked suspiciously illegal. The room was a mess. Designer clothes scattered everywhere, champagne bottles on the balcony table, and 2 sets of everything. 2 bathrobes, 2 champagne glasses, 2 plates from room service. Well, that's not very discreet, Nate observed, photographing everything. But it was the laptop open on the desk that really caught my attention. Vanessa had always been careless with passwords, and apparently that hadn't changed. Her email was open, and the recent messages told a very interesting story. Look at this, I said, scrolling through her correspondence. She's been planning this for months. The divorce, the business partnership with Trent, even trying to get custody of Emily. Screenshot everything, Nate said, keeping watch at the door. We need to... He stopped mid-sentence, holding up his hand. Voices in the hallway getting closer. Told you we should have stayed at the party longer, a woman was saying. Vanessa's voice slightly slurred from champagne. Relax, nobody's going to miss us for an hour, came the reply. Trent's voice smug and confident as always. Nate and I looked at each other. The plan had been to gather evidence and leave, but sometimes the universe hands you opportunities you can't ignore. Bathroom, Nate whispered, pointing to the suite's elaborate bathroom. Now. We barely made it inside before the door opened. Through the crack in the bathroom door, I could see directly into the main room. Vanessa stumbled in first, wearing a red evening gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was laughing at something Trent had said, her hand on his chest. Trent followed, already loosening his bow tie. His mask, an elaborate gold and black design, was pushed up on his forehead. I can't believe Carter actually thought he could intimidate us, Vanessa said, kicking off her heels. Did you see his face when I handed him those papers? Priceless. The man's a fool, Trent agreed, pouring himself a drink from the minibar. $20 million and he just hands it over to his wife. No prenup, no protection. It's almost sad. Almost, Vanessa laughed, but not quite sad enough to stop me from taking everything he has. I felt Nate's hand on my shoulder, a warning to stay calm. But hearing them mock me, mock my trust, mock the marriage I'd thought was real. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to burst out of that bathroom. What about Emily? Trent asked, settling onto the couch. You really think you can get full custody? Please, Carter's a workaholic who travels constantly for business. I'm a successful lawyer with a stable practice. Any judge will see that Emily belongs with me. And the money. Community property laws are beautiful things. I'll get half of everything, plus alimony, plus child support. And with Carter's guilt over the divorce, he'll probably give me more just to avoid a fight. They were wrong about that. Very, very wrong. Trent moved closer to Vanessa on the couch, and I realized we were about to witness something I really didn't want to see. But Nate was already recording, and this was exactly the evidence we needed. You know what the best part is? Vanessa said, leaning into Trent's embrace. He actually thinks this is about love, that I fell out of love with him and into love with you. He has no idea this is just business. Just business? Trent looked almost offended. Oh, don't pout. You're getting what you want too. A successful law firm, a beautiful wife, and access to Carter's entire network of wealthy clients. It's a perfect arrangement. What about my wife? What about her? You said yourself she's been expecting this divorce for years. She'll take her settlement and disappear to that little house in Vermont she's always talking about. Everyone wins. Except me, apparently, and Emily, and Trent's wife, who was about to have her world destroyed so these two could play house with my money. I'd heard enough. More than enough. I stood up and walked out of the bathroom. Well, I said as both of them spun around in shock, this is awkward. Vanessa screamed, actually screamed, like she'd seen a ghost. Trent jumped to his feet so fast he knocked over his drink, the glass shattering on the marble floor. Carter, what are you? How did you? You can't be here. And yet, here I am. I looked around the suite, taking in the evidence of their deception. Nice place. I especially like the adjoining door to Trent's room. Very convenient. Trent had recovered from his initial shock and was trying to reassert control. This is breaking and entering. I'm calling security. Go ahead, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm sure they'd love to hear the recording I just made of your entire conversation. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You were recording us? Every word. The business arrangement, the custody plans, the part where you called me a fool for trusting my wife. All of it. Nate emerged from the bathroom, camera in hand. Got some great photos, too. Really captures the intimacy of your business relationship. You son of a... Trent started toward me, but I held up my hand. I wouldn't. You see, my friend here used to be a cop. He knows exactly how much force constitutes self-defense and how much constitutes assault. Want to test those boundaries? Trent stopped, but his hands were clenched into fists. What do you want? What do I want? I laughed, and it felt good. Really good. I want a lot of things, Trent. I want my wife to have been faithful. I want my marriage to have been real. I want my daughter not to have to go through a divorce. I walked over to the balcony doors and looked out at the ocean. But since I can't have any of those things, I'll settle for justice. Justice? Vanessa had found her voice again. You broke into my room. You violated my privacy. Your room. Funny thing about that, Vanessa. I checked the credit card records. This room, Trent's room, this entire cruise, all paid for with our joint account. The account I froze yesterday. The silence that followed was beautiful. That's impossible, she whispered. Is it? When's the last time you actually checked your bank balance? Or tried to use a credit card? Because I'm betting you've been living off cash and Trent's generosity for the past few days. Trent was looking at Vanessa with something approaching panic. You said you had access to the accounts. I did. I should have. We're still married. We're still married, I corrected. I filed for divorce this morning. Irreconcilable differences with a side of adultery and fraud. My lawyer thinks it's a very strong case. The room erupted again. Vanessa started crying. Not the elegant tears of a wronged woman, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone watching their carefully laid plans crumble. Trent was pacing, running his hands through his hair, muttering about damage control and legal options. Oh, and Trent, I said, heading for the door, you might want to call your wife. I sent her copies of all these photos about an hour ago. His face went white. You didn't. I did. Along with the financial records, showing how you've been using your joint accounts to fund this little romantic getaway. She seemed very interested in that information. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, Nate right behind me. But I couldn't resist one final parting shot. By the way, Vanessa, Emily knows everything. I showed her the divorce papers, played her the recordings, explained exactly why Mommy won't be coming home. She wanted me to tell you that she's not surprised. Apparently, she's known for months that you were lying about your late nights at the office. Carter, wait! But I was already walking away, feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear them arguing, blaming each other, their perfect plan falling apart in real time. The masquerade was over and everyone could finally see who they really were. The next morning, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when Emily came downstairs for breakfast. At 12, she had her mother's sharp intelligence, but thankfully, her father's sense of loyalty. She'd been remarkably calm about the divorce, almost relieved. Dad, she said, pouring herself orange juice, Mom called my phone 17 times last night. Did you answer? Once. She was crying and saying you'd ruined everything. I told her. She ruined everything when she decided to cheat on you. Emily sat down across from me, her expression serious. Was I too mean? I reached across and squeezed her hand. You were honest. Sometimes honesty feels mean, but it's still the right thing to do. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Check the news. Channel 7. I turned on the television and found the local morning show. The anchor was reading from a teleprompter with barely concealed glee. In a shocking turn of events, the newly opened law firm Hawthorne and Bishop Legal Services has reportedly lost its primary investor and faces potential closure. Sources close to the firm say that founding partner Vanessa Hawthorne's husband withdrew his $20 million investment following allegations of impropriety. Emily looked at me with raised eyebrows. Allegations of impropriety? That's newspeak for, your mother got caught cheating, and now everyone knows about it. The story continued with footage of the law firm's office building. Through the windows, I could see people moving around frantically, probably trying to salvage whatever they could before the whole thing collapsed. The firm's other founding partner, Trent Bishop, was reportedly unreachable for comment, though sources suggest he may be dealing with personal legal issues of his own. That would be his divorce. According to Nate's contacts, Trent's wife, Margaret, had filed papers yesterday afternoon. Apparently, 23 years of marriage meant less to Trent than a business opportunity. But it meant quite a lot to Margaret's very expensive divorce attorney. My phone rang, Vanessa's number. Should I answer it? I asked Emily. Put it on speaker, she said. I want to hear this. I accepted the call. Hello, Vanessa. Carter, thank God. Listen, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. There are things you don't understand, explanations. I understand perfectly. You've been planning to divorce me for months, steal half my assets, and take my daughter away from me. What exactly needs explaining? It's not like that. Yes, Trent and I have feelings for each other, but the business arrangement was separate. The law firm is legitimate. The investment was sound, was being the operative phrase, past tense. Emily gestured for the phone. I handed it to her. Hi, Mom. Emily. Sweetheart, I've been trying to reach you. Are you okay? Has your father been saying terrible things about me? He didn't need to say anything. I figured it out myself months ago. The late nights, the new clothes, the way you started talking about Dad like he was some kind of burden. I'm not stupid. There was silence on the other end of the line. Emily, I love you. Whatever happens between your father and me, that doesn't change. If you loved me, you wouldn't have tried to take me away from Dad. I heard you on the recording, talking about custody, like I was some kind of prize to be won. You heard, Vanessa's voice cracked. Carter, you played those recordings for our daughter? I took the phone back. I played them for my daughter. She deserves to know the truth about what kind of person her mother really is. I'm coming home. We're going to sit down and discuss this like adults. No, you're not. I changed the locks yesterday. Your clothes are packed and waiting in the garage. Everything else in that house was purchased with my money, so it stays with me. You can't do that. I have rights. You had rights. You forfeited them when you decided to commit adultery and fraud. My lawyer was very clear about how that affects property division in this state. I hung up and looked at Emily. She was staring at her orange juice, looking older than her 12 years. You okay? I asked. I'm sad, she said quietly. Not about the divorce. I think that's probably for the best. I'm sad that Mom turned out to be the kind of person who would do all this. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see a familiar figure on my porch. Julia Martinez, Vanessa's office manager, looking nervous and clutching a manila envelope. Stay here, I told Emily, and went to answer the door. Mr. Hawthorne, Julia said when I opened it. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I need to give you this. She handed me the envelope. Inside were legal documents, something about asset recovery and emergency injunctions. What is this? Mrs. Hawthorne hired a new lawyer, someone who specializes in high asset divorces. They're trying to freeze your accounts and force you to restore funding to the law firm. I looked at Julia more carefully. She seemed genuinely uncomfortable about being here. Why are you telling me this? Aren't you supposed to be on Vanessa's side? Julia glanced around nervously. Can I come in? There are things you need to know. I led her into the living room. Emily appeared in the doorway, curious about our visitor. The law firm is falling apart, Julia said without preamble. 3 of our biggest clients pulled out yesterday when the news broke. The landlord is threatening eviction because the rent check bounced. And Trent, she shook her head. Trent's been stealing money. Stealing how? Client funds. Settlement money that was supposed to go to clients. He's been moving it into personal accounts. Mrs. Hawthorne doesn't know. At least, I don't think she knows. But when the State Bar Association finds out, they're both going to be in serious trouble. Emily sat down next to me on the couch. Why are you telling us this? Julia looked at her, then back at me. Because I have 2 kids of my own, and I know what it's like when parents put their own drama ahead of what's best for their children. Mrs. Hawthorne is so focused on getting back at you that she's not thinking clearly. She's going to destroy herself, and she's going to take a lot of innocent people down with her. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. These are from last night and this morning. She's asking me to help her fabricate evidence, lie to investigators, even hide financial records. I won't do it. The messages were damning. Vanessa wasn't just trying to salvage her marriage or her business. She was actively trying to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing. I just thought you should know what you're dealing with, and she hesitated. I'm going to quit today. I can't be part of this anymore. But before I do, I wanted to make sure someone knew the truth about what's been happening. After Julia left, Emily and I sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could see neighbors pretending to work in their yards while obviously hoping for more drama. The story was spreading through our upscale subdivision like wildfire. Dad, Emily said eventually, what happens now? Now we wait. Your mother's going to try everything she can think of to get out of this mess. Some of it will be legal, some of it won't. But the truth has a way of coming out, and the truth is on our side. My phone buzzed with another text from Nate. Meet me at Murphy's bar at 8 p.m. Bring the recordings. We need to talk. Murphy's was a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where cops and private investigators went to drink and share information. Not exactly my usual scene, but Nate had been invaluable through all of this. Want to order pizza for dinner? I asked Emily. I have to meet Nate later, but we can watch a movie first. Can we watch something with explosions? I feel like we need explosions today. I laughed, and it felt good. Despite everything that had happened, despite the legal battles ahead, I still had my daughter, and that was worth more than all the money Vanessa was trying to steal. But as we settled in to watch an action movie, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Vanessa was desperate now, and desperate people did unpredictable things. I was about to find out just how unpredictable. Murphy's bar smelled like stale beer and broken dreams, which seemed appropriate for the conversation I was about to have. Nate was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a beer and a grim expression. We have a problem, he said before I even sat down. Just one? That would be an improvement. He didn't smile at my joke. Instead, he slid a photograph across the table. It showed me entering Vanessa's cruise ship suite, clear as day. Where did this come from? Vanessa's new lawyer. Apparently, she hired a private investigator of her own. They're claiming you stalked her, broke into her room, and illegally recorded private conversations. I stared at the photo. This is ridiculous. We had evidence of her adultery, her fraud, evidence we obtained illegally. Carter, I should have thought this through better. In my eagerness to help you, I may have made things worse. The bartender brought me a beer I didn't remember ordering. The bar was filling up with the after-work crowd, construction workers, office drones, people whose biggest worry was making rent, not seven-figure divorce settlements. How much worse? Nate pulled out a folder. Vanessa's lawyer is good, really good. She's spinning this whole thing as a case of domestic abuse and financial control. You're the wealthy, controlling husband who cut off his wife's access to money when she tried to assert her independence. Independence? She was stealing from me. Prove it, in court, with evidence that wasn't obtained through breaking and entering. I felt the walls closing in. What about the recordings from the law firm? I was there legitimately. I was an investor. Those might hold up. But the cruise ship recordings? Any judge is going to throw those out and probably sanction us for obtaining them illegally. This was not going according to plan. I'd thought I was being clever, staying one step ahead of Vanessa's schemes. Instead, I'd walked right into a trap. There's more, Nate said. She's filed for emergency custody of Emily. Claims you're psychologically damaging her by involving her in adult disputes. Emily figured most of it out herself. I know that. You know that. But family court judges err on the side of protecting children, even from well-meaning parents. If Vanessa can convince a judge that you're using Emily as a weapon in your divorce, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I could lose my daughter. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Check your email, time-sensitive, a friend. I opened my email and found a message with several video attachments. The sender was listed as Justice Carter, obviously a fake account. What is it? Nate asked. I clicked on the first video. It was security footage from the law firm, showing Trent and Vanessa in her office after hours. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. They weren't just kissing. They were going through client files, photographing documents, transferring money between accounts. All the financial crimes Julia had mentioned, captured in high definition. Where did this come from? Nate whispered. The second video was even better. It showed Trent meeting with a man I didn't recognize, handing over a briefcase full of cash. The timestamp was from yesterday, while he was supposed to be dealing with his divorce crisis. Someone's been watching them, I realized. Someone with access to multiple security systems. My phone rang. Unknown number. Answer it, Nate said. Put it on speaker. Mr. Hawthorne? The voice was electronically distorted, like something from a spy movie. I trust you received my email. Who is this? Someone who believes justice should be served. Your wife and her partner have made many enemies in their short time in business. Not everyone appreciates being stolen from. What do you want? Nothing from you. But I thought you should know that Mrs. Hawthorne is planning something desperate for tonight. Something involving your daughter. My blood went cold. What kind of something? She's hired men to take Emily from your house. The plan is to claim you're mentally unstable and dangerous. She'll have Emily rescued and taken to a safe location, then use that as evidence in her emergency custody hearing. Nate was already on his feet, throwing money on the table. We need to go, now. Wait, I said into the phone. How do I know you're telling the truth? Check the third video file. It was recorded an hour ago. I clicked on the file as we rushed toward the exit. It showed Vanessa in what looked like a hotel room, talking to two large men in dark clothing. One of them was showing her photographs of my house, pointing out entry points and security cameras. Oh my God, I breathed. Mr. Hawthorne, the distorted voice continued, I suggest you call the police. But be warned, your wife has friends in the department. Not everyone will be on your side. The call ended. We ran to my car, Nate already dialing 911 on his phone. This is Nathan Rodriguez, private investigator license number 7749. I need to report a planned kidnapping in progress. As he gave the dispatcher my address, I tried calling Emily. No answer. I tried the landline. Nothing. Drive faster, Nate said. The trip home usually took 20 minutes. I made it in 12, running red lights and taking corners on two wheels. Nate was on the phone with his contacts in the police department, trying to get units dispatched to my house. There's a problem, he said as we pulled into my neighborhood. The 911 call about Emily was reported as a false alarm. Someone called in and said it was a prank. What? Vanessa's people got to the dispatch system. They're buying themselves time. I could see my house at